Welcome to Thriller Bitcoin. Welcome to Thriller Bitcoin.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
The most famous person I know in Bitcoin right now.
That's not true, man.
Dude, your star has risen. What's going on, bro? Like, you're breaking news now?
Yeah, I'm blowing up a little bit, I guess. I don't know, man. I don't know. It was cool. Yeah, my buddy Spencer, he's awesome. So I wish him the best of luck, and I'm very blessed that he let me break his news on my podcast. So he's the man.
So what actually happened? I'm not on Twitter, but I just know because you posted it in our internal chat for Pleb Lab. But what was it? Like, what was it?
Yeah, so he recently got signed as a kicker for the Indianapolis Colts, and he announced on the pod that he's going to take his full signing bonus in Bitcoin.
Whoa.
Yeah, but I mean, like how it works in the NFL, obviously there's like 32 teams, right? And they only keep one kicker on. So the Colts have like a veteran kicker. His name's Matt Gay. That they signed to like a longer deal. But the benefit is they signed Spencer they signed him to a contract. So he'll play the full preseason with the Colts. He might not end up on the Colts during the season. But he gets to showcase his talents there. So he's an awesome guy. He's actually, his family runs the Mises Institute down here in Florida as well. So they're going to put together some events and things like that here in the future. So overall, just like a great dude, and man of God, and just a bright kid too, to say the least.
Yeah, I love to see it. It's interesting how like you stick around Bitcoin long enough, you end up seeing it finds the right people, if that makes any sense. Like the people that will take it to the next level, and it sounds like that's what he's doing.
100%. Yeah. So, I mean, he's awesome. Like I had some of my friends film some videos that are like non-Bitcoiners. They were just like, one of them's a Notre Dame fan, and he kicked at Notre Dame last year. And so he wanted to come out, and he was like, yeah, I mean, this is a guy that you really want to like represent your organization or whatever you're doing, just because of how great of a person he is. So, but he's, really ambitious. He like told the story on the pod too. I don't want to spoil it all, but he told the story of how he was like basically like bumming it, saving like a bunch so he could buy like rental properties. And then he's bought Bitcoin through that, and he's tried to orange pill his teammates and everything. So overall, just a great guy, and really hardworking. So hopefully, I mean, I have a good feeling that everything's going to work out well for him, just because of, his work ethic and,
mindset.
Just the type of person.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's a big part of it. Right. Is all those things, the things that that you can't really grade on paper.
Yeah, 100%.
Those actually matter more. I've come to realize. What do I know? Brandon. So we had you on today. We do like a quarterly macro kind of pleb update for the plebs. Because plebs don't. I mean, I don't, dude. You're the guy that I talk to about the macro stuff. I don't know what's going on. I'm too focused on everyday in Pleb Lab, but yeah, for the people at home, let people know who you are, and a little bit about Green Candle, and then we can jump into the macro thing.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, thanks for having me on again, Carr. You're the man. So I'm Brandon. I have a media company called Green Candle. It's I'm trying to build, I guess, the barstool of finance is how I kind of word it. So my indirect way to orange pill people is kind of making it fun, friendly, not as much of the jargon, and pretty easy to digest. With the undertone of Bitcoin. So trying to, bring it all together, because I think at the end of the day, all this stuff is intertwined. And now that traditional finance is in with the spot ETFs, it seems like, they're kind of trying to find ways to figure out more about Bitcoin as well. So I'm blessed that Car is entrusted in me to come and give these macro updates for the plebs. But
who else would I go to? I mean, you're the guy, dude. I mean, you when you do write, it's always a banger. I wish you read more, but I know how crazy or busy you are.
I know. You're pushing me to write more. I have like an article in the drafts here that I've started, but I haven't gotten around to finishing it. It's looking at the gold versus Bitcoin ETFs, which I actually spoke about at the Canadian Bitcoin conference too. So I should be able to crank that out here soon. I just got to sit down and do it.
Yeah. We can get into all that stuff, because I know we want to plug all the things that you're going to be doing this summer. But yeah, let's jump into the, I guess, Q2 macro outlook for.
But yeah, Q2. So actually today, the day we're recording this on the 5th, the Bank of Canada announced that they're cutting rates by 25 basis points. And then the European Central Bank, it's like a 90% chance that they're going to cut rates tomorrow, which would be the 6th, by 25 basis points. But, the interesting thing of all that, right, is like usually the U.S. is kind of what leads and everybody tails the U.S., kind of like leading in the background. But it seems like this time everybody else is kind of leading the U.S. But what does that mean for, obviously the U.S., the dollar and everything like that? I think, the U.S. is still going to stay the higher for longer. I think Powell, I'm kind of sticking to the prediction that I, wrote about at the beginning of this year, where I don't think we're going to cut rates until Q4. If you look at, I can't remember what the bond market says here for the U.S., but I know it's a very minimal chance that we cut at the next meeting. I believe it's in a couple weeks here. So, I think that the Powell's going to still stick to his guns. Inflation is still, sticky, right? Despite what the Fed and everybody was saying, it's not transitory. It's not going away. So they're going to keep rates high and elevated. And I think that they're going to keep it elevated at least through the end of, towards the end of this year, maybe even through this year, and not cut until 25. We've already seen kind of some of the prep for that too. President Biden came up and said that, the rate cuts might be delayed until next year or later this year. So yeah. And it's funny how things change, because 4 years ago he was saying, about Trump, that he shouldn't be commenting on when the Fed cuts rates or raises rates or anything like that. And then now, the opposite party is doing the same thing. So, it's kind of getting more politicized. So I wouldn't be surprised if, come like November time, when it's the election season, we're not going to see a cut. And so, obviously that means money is going to be still harder to come by. There's not going to be as much like prosperous growth. And that's all in the name of trying to fight inflation. And, it's still going to be here, right? You print 40% of the money supply in a year span or so, you're going to still suffer the lingering effects. And I don't think we've still gotten over the full effects of, the full money printing and the full QE. But they're going to try to find creative ways on how to go about QE, which is essentially it's quantitative easing. So, in the Bitcoin space, we know that as like money printing, but there's other ways that they can do that, right? We've seen them kind of forgive student loans or delay payments, other ways to kind of help the consumer remain prosperous. But we're still seeing, cracks in the consumer showing. We're seeing, a lot of things like credit card debt reach, an all-time high, personal savings get lower. And housing affordability is just, not there. It's at the worst it's been since they've been tracking it. Granted, they've been tracking it for like 20 years, but housing affordability is still not very good. And it just seems to be going in a worse and worse direction. But all that being said, everything price or asset wise, it seems to be ripping, right? I mean, we're recording this today. Bitcoin passed 71,000 right before we started recording. The S&P 500 is up 13% nearly year to date, and has reached about an all-time high, or just maybe past it. So, I mean, it's just kind of one of those things where it's, despite a lot of cracks under the macro surface, asset prices are still ripping and rolling, man. I don't know, like, how else to say it.
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing about all of this, Brandon, to me, is just like we had the halving, right? And and that was something that I thought was, really interesting, because I think Runes was launching at that time, and some other poo-poo stuff was launching at that time, and we kind of all thought as Bitcoiners, like, okay, well, maybe it's going to freeze up some of these transfers. But this is where I think for me, I'm trying to get a clear picture of this. Is like, do you think that's just because Bitcoin's resilient in that, or do you think it's more of, we've seen this before? We know that a lot of the money that's flowing into Bitcoin is going to come from geopolitical factors, or even because it's like tensiony, I guess, around the world. And then also, like I think you were saying, longer rates. And then, there's always a national debt, but I don't know, man. Like, what's your gauge on all this?
Yeah. So, I mean, the gauge as far as like Bitcoin goes, right? Bitcoin is resilient. Bitcoin doesn't care. Bitcoin will keep pushing and rolling on. The unique part about this cycle is that, Bitcoin obviously reached an all-time high before the halving, which is the first time that kind of happened. And, because of that, I think in large part, that was because of, the news of the Bitcoin spot ETFs in the US. But normally, we kind of see Bitcoin rip a lot later. If you look at it in majority of the cycles, right, we see the halvings kind of in the springtime, and then you don't really see Bitcoin start to rip until like fall, or winter time. So, I think in that case, it's unique. I think we might, because of that, we're going to probably crab walk along the all-time high, because there is more money in it right now. But, I think the miners feel like more of a delayed effect, because, they kind of prepare for this. You can prepare so much, right, for the halving and the increased cost. But I also know some miners, like, they actually got kind of a relief in a sense, because of things like Runes, things like, ordinals and all that kind of junk being raising the transaction fees. And, I think like last cycle, a lot of the miners saw or got ambitious, went into a lot of leverage based on, like leveraging off their depreciating machines, leveraging off of, their Bitcoin holdings and everything like that. And then when the crash happened, they got screwed. Right. So I think, everybody's going to be a little bit smarter this time, a little bit more conservative. And in my eyes, that's going to kind of delay the run up a little bit. I hope not too much, because I did make a bet at the beginning of this year that Bitcoin's going to hit 100K. So, and if I lose, then I have to eat like 2 of these flaming hot peppers on camera. So, I'm hoping that I don't have to do that. But I wouldn't be surprised if, we don't start to see like a real significant run up until like, fall almost to the winter time.
Yeah. Hopefully they're not the Carolina Reapers, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, they are? Dude. Oh, snap.
Yeah.
Dude.
No, it's not great. It's either me or Julian from Kinetic Finance, or I guess Get Based.
Oh, man, dude. Those Carolina Reapers. It's not even the heat, Brandon. It's your stomach's just going to hurt.
Yeah. So, I mean, I actually I listened to a podcast. You'll probably remember this guy's name better than I do, but the guy that goes around and does like all the food challenges. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think so. Man versus food guy?
Yeah. I can't think of his name.
Whatever happened to him? Did he die?
I don't think he died. I think I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember it, like a long time ago, maybe like 6 months or a year ago or something. But I remember this. He said, before eating spicy foods, you need to eat like a banana or 2 just to kind of coat, because like the things in the banana just kind of help help it sit in your stomach and help on the way out too. So I'll probably have to do that. But yeah, well, I guess hopefully I don't have to do that, and I'm having to coach Julian on how to go through that. But I don't know, man. It's
what's going on with what's going on with the Treasury? Are they still backstopping a lot of these banks from going under. I mean, like what's going, I know there's bond yields and like, or I guess, I don't know. Are they treasury? I don't know. But just from what I've just been hearing in the chatter, like what's going on with all that? Like, are they still borrowing some of these costs?
Yeah. So, I mean, the yield curves is inverted. That's kind of like what the bearish sentiment is. And that's kind of like their go-to, right? As to why everything's going to break. Because that doesn't really happen very often. And every time that does happen, something does break. Mm-hmm. But the reason why I think that, things aren't going to break anytime soon is because we've already kind of opened up the faucet when it comes to money printing. And so what I think is that the first sign of any sort of cracks or recession, that's what's going to happen. They're going to inject a bunch of liquidity into the market. But, as far as like the banking system and everything like that, I don't think that they're going to let the banks fail anymore. I think they're monitoring that a lot. It's interesting because as Bitcoiners, right, we've seen a lot of the issues in the current system. But I think, the average Joe just doesn't understand like these things don't make sense, right? They just kind of like accept that this is the way it is. And so I think as Bitcoiners, we all realize the current system has a lot of faults. The current system is meant to fail and is going to fail eventually. And I think we overestimate how quickly it'll happen sometimes because, the normies kind of are just still living in delusion where they think everything's fine. And I think the fog and mirrors, so to speak, of the current system are going to keep living on for at least for a little bit, to the point where, a lot of these things that they don't make sense. A lot of the old definitions, right? Like they had the old definition of what a recession is, which was like 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. We've already had that. And then they changed the definition of what it is because they say we aren't in a recession. So, I mean, but if you look at the polls of I don't know, I saw some survey. So this kind of was on the top of my mind that it's like 60% of retail people think that we're in a recession already. And, the average Wall Street bro is screaming at the top of the lungs that we aren't. So, I think traditional finance and like the average person still doesn't really completely understand like what is going on. And I think for that reason, like we're still going to live in this kind of like fugazi world where it's a lot of the smoke and mirrors kind of living on. Right. So, there's a lot of cracks. The yield curve's inverted. The bond market's like not doing very well. It's at like all-time highs. It's absolutely crazy and it's not sustainable. And so, I think they'll have to decrease rates at some point in time, but I think they're going to wait until something's either on the edge of breaking or breaks. And we don't really see the full extent of a rate cut in real time. It's always a delayed effect, which I think, we'll start to cut rates. And when we do, it'll be too late because it's all run by humans, right? So it's human error and it's built into the system, unfortunately, or at least the current system.
Yeah.
Right.
It's weird, dude. Like it kind of reminds, I think the last time we talked about this too, like earlier this year when we talked the last time, and I think at that time I said that it almost feels like there's 2 realities happening. But now as we kind of move more into this year, I'm kind of realizing it's more like a Tenet. You ever see Tenet? The movie Tenet?
No.
You've never seen Tenet? Oh my God. It's an amazing movie. Just visually, it's amazing. Well, in the movie, there's this like, it's going forward. The story is happening forward, but at the same time, it's also inverted. So it's happening backwards too at the same time. And there are these 2 it's reality of the situation is its baseline, but these 2, I'm not even going to call them timeline because it's all relative within the movie of the framework that Nolan made in this universe. I'm going to get to the point that I'm trying to get at, but it's entropy, right? So it's going this way, and then it's also going this way. And when I look at what's going on in the world, because I was just doing a podcast with one of our local guys here, and that reality of what he sees, just the everyday normal Joe, right, is completely going bad. Like it's actually bad for them, right? But then we, like all of us Bitcoiners and even the TradFi people, like it's a different reality that's going forward, and these other people are going backwards. And that's the most scary thing that it's happening right now. Is before, it almost felt like there's two simultaneous kind of things going on in America. Now it's like, feels like Tenet, where it's like some people are moving forward and we know where it's all headed as Bitcoiners and people that are very privileged to know this information. And then there's the other way around, where it's like those people who aren't hanging out in the right circles or just aren't watching because, the local news and all these other, like, they're just not going to talk about Bitcoin in a positive way. And so this is where I kind of see, it's just like, man, this sucks, dude. This is why it's so important, like, to get out there and like be louder as Bitcoiners. I don't know, man. Yeah, what do you think? Is that crazy?
No, I don't think that's crazy at all. And I think you're like nailing it on the head. It's like, I think people don't like to think about money. So those that do, like Bitcoiners, right? I mean, I feel like we probably have like thought, 10,000 hours or maybe more on it. How we can preserve our wealth. Like, what does that look like? What we want our life to be. A lot of people like to zone that things out and don't like to think about that because they get scared of the future and things like that. So, when these things start to slap them in the face, that's when they get, really anxious. That's when you see, like, I don't know, them diving into different things. So I think, I think that there's like two different realities people are living in. And I think it's part of the economic times too, because, there's, in every crisis, the wealth gap significantly increases, right? So the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, because you see times like we're right now, where the asset prices of whatever you got, whether it's Bitcoin, real estate, S&P 500, they all increase while inflation is going up. So people's everyday expenses are going up. Well, who can afford everyday expenses going up? Probably the richer people, right? Or the upper middle class, or people that have assets. Maybe they can, sell off a little bit to kind of help sustain those waters. Well, the lower class can't really do that. They'll have to pick up another job or everything like that. And, they'll just get more unhappy. And that's when we'll see some more unrest from the lower to the lower middle class. And so I think that's kind of what we're seeing, right? Like I said, the housing affordability is going down, although housing prices are going up. So everybody that has a house is like, hey, this is great. But, what about that, new generation coming into work? One, the job market isn't great.
Decimated, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a workshop last week, and there's a guy that said that he lost his job.
Yeah. I mean, I believe it. My little brother just graduated from grad school at UT in Austin. So I won't have my couch to crash on in downtown Austin anymore, unfortunately. But he like hasn't been able to find a job. He's been applying since like October time. So he's been like actively looking for stuff. And, he has a grad degree in mechanical engineering from UT, which is, one of the better grad degree programs there is, especially in the Texas area. So, I think overall it's harder for those people that, one, don't have experience. They have to start to come in. And then two, it's like, those people that are kind of, on the middle end, like not quite C-suite, but just maybe below or something like that, where it's like, all right, well, we could probably fire those type of people and hire somebody a little bit less pay to come and do just as much work. Maybe it'll be a little less quality, but, that's what I think companies are going to start to do. I've heard companies like one of my buddies actually just texted me today. He's worried that they're going to can his whole department because he's seen in the past like 2 months, all of his C-suite executives leave. And then now they're outsourcing a lot of their work to India. So I think like businesses are starting to definitely feel the pain of these higher rates. Because we've had a resilient consumer for a very long time with these high rates. And I think at the end, it's just going to start to catch up. And like I said, I think it's going to be too late when we kind of flip the switch and start to cut.
Gosh, do you think there's, so it seems from like Q1 to Q2, it's actually gotten worse, maybe. Is that what we're kind of summarizing here? Or surmising here?
I think the overall, so my theory basically for this entire year has been that asset prices are going to rip, but it's going to be like on the on top of like a glass or a house of cards, basically, where the bottom is like the consumer and the consumers are starting to fall. Right. And so I think the asset prices and everything like that, like Bitcoin, everything are still going to do well. I still believe, like, if you're holding Bitcoin, even if you're holding like the S&P 500, I think like it's going to have a very good year. And like housing is still going to have a very good year. I think but at the end of the day, the consumer is going to be what suffers, and I think like it's going to be delayed until probably like late 24, early 25, where we really start to see like those bad things happen. And whoever's the next sitting president is going to have to basically do what they can to try to clean up that mess. And that's just kind of the vibe I'm getting and feeling, because yeah, I mean, if no matter who you talk to, like people are either super bearish or super bullish. And the bearish people have been bearish for a long time because they've been citing a lot of these cracks. And the bullish people are like, how can you be bearish when you're looking at all these asset prices rip and continue to rip? So yeah, I think that's going to continue. It's just, there's a lot of these cracks beneath the surface that are starting to rise up a little bit. I don't think we'll see them kind of get to the surface until, like I said, like late this year, early next year.
Yeah, it's interesting because like, there's this big interview coming up tonight with what's that guy's name? Tucker Carlson and Bukele. It's going to be like a really humongous interview for Bitcoin, I would say, because like this guy, however you feel about him, he's polarizing.
Yeah,
and 100%. There's something to be said about people that are polarizing. Kanye's like that. This guy's clearly like that. And a lot of people are going to watch it tonight, like a lot of people. And so what am I trying to get at is, do you think there's going to be a point at some point this year where we kind of have a come to Jesus moment with the United States government, when they're going to look at all these other nations and they're going to see El Salvador and be like, what are we doing? What the hell are we doing in America where we getting completely dominated by people in other countries, building up their prosperity for their citizens, leading the way technologically with mining? Like, do you think we're going to have that moment here in the States? Or you think they're just going to be like, let's wait and see. It's an experiment. Let's keep going down this communistic route. Let's keep going down and try to kill innovation as much as we can. Let's scare more Bitcoin companies. Let's scare more AI companies. Let's get them out of here. Like, dude, this is becoming a really like annoying thing in America right now, and I'm not leaving Texas. I'm just not. It's not going to happen. But I'm 100% just like dissatisfied with our leadership right now in our government. It's like, do we have to get the stupidest person in some what is going on? Like, Brandon, what is going on, dude? Like, can we, is it hard to find really smart people? I mean, is it just really that bad with just the corruption? Do you think it's that bad? I don't want to believe that. I want to believe we just have really dumb people at the helm. Like, I want to believe that really bad. I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. I just want to make sure sorry.
No, you're great. I think, that's a great rant. I mean, I think that's what a majority of Americans are feeling. I think you got to look at it in certain ways, right? I think that government always wants to be in power. One party, the Democratic Party, which is in power now, wants for a bigger government. And so when they want for bigger government, they're going to push as much as they can because, there's going to be people like, I'm not saying it's a fault or anything like that, but people like yourself that, won't leave this country because they're American. This is where they have their roots and everything like that, right? I mean, say what you want about California, right? I mean, as a state, you can't deny it's not a beautiful state, right?
It's gorgeous.
I went out there. I went out for the Pacific Bitcoin Conference, and it was absolutely gorgeous, right? But we saw during COVID, thousands, millions of people leave the state of California who would stay there no matter what, because the taxes and the tax rates didn't change or anything like that, but it was because of the overarching control and that kind of aspect of it. So, governments were kind of like, pushing as much as they can. Then they're like, seeing how much do you really want to live in these areas, right? But I think, I guess I'll have to divulge my feelings here on like the political party.
Yeah, because like honestly, Brandon, like I think we're well past the point of trying to be politically correct. We're well past the point of like, hey, man, maybe okay, you don't have values, you don't have principles, but gains at all costs. I mean, let's just be honest. Like, let's just have an honest conversation with each other about where we're headed in America, because it's obviously not working, not talking about these things and keeping it hush hush and like not talking about what we want to see. Like, let's just be real. Let's just get back down to reality about what's actually going on here. Like, if they want to make America the next China and they want communism on their shores and they want communism in the government, then like say that. At least we know like this is where they're headed. But like, I want to believe there's patriots within our government that want to change things, that actually want to bring prosperity, not only to their children, but their children's children. I want to believe that the American dream is still out there, because I'm also building a business here in Austin, and there's other people around me building businesses here in Austin. And we want to believe that America and Austin, Texas is the place to come build these things. I don't want to believe there's a better place in the entire fucking world that I should be building a Bitcoin company. I want to believe it's here in Austin, and especially here in the United States. That's where I'm coming from. It's like that leadership is listening. It's like, show some like be smart. Like, just get us smarter people in office, man.
No, I agree with you. Somebody needs to clip that, because that was amazing, dude. But
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm so frustrated, dude.
No,
I'm so frustrated.
I think, you're seeing things like El Salvador, right? Like, what are they doing? They're basically opening up their doors for tech, right? They're saying if you have tech, if you have a Bitcoin business, if you come in and hire people that stay down here, even if you do business out here, zero tax, right? The best that we're getting right now is Trump coming out and saying that, they'll cut payroll tax from companies and businesses, which is like, all right, maybe $5,000 for a full family. So, all right, $5,000 for a family of 4 or something like that, right? After, whatever, that's not even like, $1,000 a month. Like, what does that really get? Maybe like another night out, another, one nice meal that the family of 4 can go to. It's really not anything sustainable. What he's hoping is that, businesses then start to pay people more because they don't have to pay as much in taxes. Granted, we don't know how that's really going to turn out depending on the company or whatever. Trump has also come out and said some positive things about Bitcoin and crypto. I don't think he really knows the difference, to be honest. He's done the NFT stuff. So I'm not saying like Trump is this great Bitcoin president or anything like that. But I do think that he sees the writing on the wall with the innovation of it. And so for me, I see that as like he sees the business side of it, right? He sees that, what was tech made a lot of money. What does he think? I think he thinks that Bitcoin and crypto is the next kind of tech boom. Or tech adjacent kind of thing that's going to bring in a lot of money to the country. So he's going to want to bring those people here into the country, while for some reason, I don't even know why Democrats want to push that away. I don't understand it. Obviously it doesn't make any sense. We've seen Elizabeth Warren come out and speak ill will about Bitcoin for years now. And then, Biden and all them have said negative things about Bitcoin as well. And then even, they said negative things about El Salvador. It's like, when is the vice president of the United States ever talked about El Salvador until it made Bitcoin legal tender? You could go back and look, but I highly doubt they ever did in a public setting. So, me, it's just, it's a fight against our freedom. But I think, at the end of the day, they see traditional finance get into Bitcoin, right? BlackRock getting in, but they want to kind of, attack it from that aspect of it, more on like the freedom side of things, opposed to, what Bitcoin is. I think that at the end of the day, the U.S. government actually really likes Bitcoin. I think because it's a public ledger, because you can transact and everything like that, they just want to force you to do KYC. So I think that's why you're seeing all the attacks on a lot of the Lightning wallets that were non-KYC. And I think that's where we're going. And, if we look at it from the lens of the United States, the political parties or whatever, the people in power, they want to make sure that you're not hiding anything so they could tax you on it later. And so that's why I think, privacy is going to be should be more of a focus for every Bitcoiner, because, who knows what they're going to do down the road with all that. But I don't think that they're ever going to try to take your Bitcoin or anything like that. I think that they just want to tax the shit out of you for it.
Yeah, I think, just to kind of button up that Trump thing. I think when we were in New York, we were visiting and we went to Trump Tower, and dude, turns out it's the only place in New York where you actually can go to the lobby and like be greeted and actually not feel like you're going to get kicked out any second. That was surprising to me. It was like, wow, I've been to a lot of different lobbies here in New York City, and Trump Tower is the only one where like they want you to come in and like go to like, it was interesting. That was fascinating. It was like, what? Also, he makes a really good restroom. I don't know if you've ever been to the Trump Tower restroom. It's immaculate. It's immaculate. It's amazing. And then third, I think you're right. I think even just somebody who just understands business and understands what's going to keep jobs and entrepreneurs in America, and understands, at least even if it's like a slightly better understanding of Bitcoin and crypto and the differences between them, is an automatic win. Dude, this is where for me it's so frustrating, because like America is like this not only like technological like powerhouse, but it also has like this freedom and foundational freedom aspects of it. And it's a beautiful country with beautiful different types of people here. And what's frustrating is we just don't have the right leadership at the helm. And it's unfortunate, because this is the time when we need it the most. And I think it's like people like you, people like myself, other people that we know that are doing things in their local community really matter right now. It's like, that's the utmost important thing, is for you to be talking about your principles and values right now, because there's just not a lot of us doing it.
100%. Yeah. And I think it's very vital to get in the ear of your like local politicians too. So, I mean, I think, Bitcoiners in general, like kind of, Bitcoin doesn't care, right? But if you care about your country and you want to be able to stay here, you need to care about, the way that politicians view Bitcoin. So whether it's educating them, showing them the power of it, showing them the community, right? I mean, just bringing them out to local things and showing them like, hey, not everything's bad, right? I mean, despite the media, the media perception of Trump is a prime example of what you're bringing up right here, right? The media perceives Trump as like this terrible guy. He's such an asshole. Like, why would he have the only place in New York City that you could go to where you feel welcome, where you feel like, oh, this is really clean, this bathroom is great? Like, why is that the case? But you're surprised by that, right? It's more probably because of the media perception.
Yeah.
What is the media perception of Bitcoin? The media perception of Bitcoin is like really negative. But if you go and you meet a politician, I'm sure majority of Bitcoiners are going to make a great impression, right? Because generally, I think, deep down, Bitcoiners are all very moral, all there for the right reasons, kind of like, utilizing this, and they want the freedom. They want everybody to be self-sovereign. And so I think like kind of introducing it and going face to face with people, I think is super important as we kind of get along this, because we got election season coming up, right? I mean, the election's in November. I mean, we're knocking down the door here, right? We're recording this in June, so I mean, we're not too far away. And so I think like building the local communities, making sure it's strong, and showing like all the positive things that you guys are doing with the undertone of Bitcoin. I mean, I think that's just extremely, extremely vital now. And I think Bitcoin's even getting on the ballot now, right? I mean, we had RFK boom for a little bit. Talking about Bitcoin, Trump's talking about Bitcoin. So, I mean, all these big politicians are talking about it. I mean, I was at the Bitcoin Energy Summit in Miami, and we had like a local Florida representative, Byron Donalds, I believe, there as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of politicians that are kind of starting to come around to Bitcoin. And I think, maybe not this election. They're going to have one that fully knows and understands, but maybe in the next 4 years, we'll get at least maybe some local representatives in the next 2, and then the following presidential election in 28, we'll probably have, Bitcoin will be a major talking point if it isn't going to be in the debates already, here in the next few months.
Yeah, totally. I think also too, it's like you said, it's really important for you to want to build that bridge to whoever it is in your community. I'm personally not somebody who could do that whole political thing, but I can reach out to the builders, to the entrepreneurs, to the creative community, to those types, the local community. But I can't. I'm not the guy for the hey, meet and greet the mayor and the city. Like, I'm not that guy. But this is where like people are listening. You don't need to be that guy. You just need to be one of those people who can, introduce them to the next guy. Like, right. So that's where I've come to realize is just find your niche, find your focus, and focus on those things in your community, and let the other people take care of the other stuff. And that's how you really move the needle forward. I want to ask you about the oil and the petrodollar and all that kind of stuff. And is that still? I mean, this is a really dumb question. So I'm sorry in advance. Are we still tied to that to some respects here in America? And how is that kind of playing out in the world? And not right now, but just like in general, like what's the sentiment with all that kind of stuff with oil contracts and all that stuff?
Yeah, there's no dumb questions here, Car. So,
well, I'm just a pleb. I literally don't pay attention to any of this stuff. So in a certain point, we are still tied to the petrodollar here. And that's because, they've opened up the gates in certain countries to say like, hey, we'll accept trade in, XYZ currency. BRICS has tried to come out and create their own cryptocurrency. But at the end of the day, nobody will pay for it. So pay for it in that. If they're only willing to accept that, right, they're going to, one, like buy that whatever currency it is or exchange it from the dollar, buy the oil, and then basically change it back. So it just makes it another more difficult step. So we still are tied to that. But here's where I think things are going. Is that, we kind of mentioned the geopolitical tensions, right? We've got, obviously the Russia-Ukraine war, the Israel conflict, and, all that stuff going on. I think it's kind of two levers being pulled. The U.S. has the monetary arm where we can just keep interest rates very high for a long time. And because we have the global reserve currency here in the U.S., we could keep that elevated and put strain on basically everybody else. While we're, not exactly prospering, but we're doing okay. Russia and the BRICS nations, they can pull the energy arm because they've been very energy dense. They haven't kicked themselves in the foot with the green energy policies, which we've done sort of in the US. And that's where they can just kind of make everybody bleed out by, kind of taking away the energy, which at the end of the day, as Bitcoiners, we know, it's not necessarily like what runs the world is money. It's energy at the root of it, right? So, I think we're pissing people off, other countries off by keeping the interest rates at a very high rate, and basically hurting all other fiat currencies against the dollar, which is making inflation run rampant and not only in the U.S., right? I mean, inflation was running way worse in other countries because of that. So, I think that's going to continue. And until, we maybe like lower interest rates or kind of, some of these geopolitical tensions simmer off a little bit, I think we're still going to be feeling some pain, right? I mean, we're sending billions and billions of dollars still over to Ukraine, to help fight this, or Ukraine fight the war. And it's like, how much money can we keep sending over there, right? Until we just either we pull out or, we continue to do that. And we just meddle into all these other wars as well. I think we're sending troops to Israel as well. So, I mean, it's like, at a certain point, why are we funding all these things when we still have problems at home? And I think, a lot of countries are getting kind of annoyed with that. So we still are tied to, the petrodollar, so to speak. But I think, commodities have been still doing very well. And oil is still ripping. Obviously, you guys probably feel it in your gas tanks, right? I mean, I just filled up on the way home today,
gas was like $3.30 or something a gallon. So still pretty high. And I still think that that's going to still remain the case, where we're still having elevated commodity prices, including oil. But luckily we have the US dollar still backing a little bit, but there is definitely tensions rising.
Interesting. Yeah, I just wanted to know what kind of your thoughts was on that. I don't think we've ever talked about that before, but I'm glad you had an answer for it. The other thing I wanted to kind of bring up was the we were talking about the community stuff and how everybody should be stepping up now. And now is not like, I would even say now is not the time to like even debate, oh, it's too dark, whether should I step up or not. Dude, like we're well past the complaining part. We're well past the darkness part. We're literally like, we're going to die. Like, like this is where we're at. Like, do you love America or you don't? Because if you don't, we're dying. And it's happening faster than you realize. And so you can either sit at home, eat Cheetos, watch YouTube all day, or you can actually do something for your community or start a family, right? Because we tend to forget that our first community was our family. So if you have families and stuff like that, definitely do that. But if you're just, going out every weekend eating Cheetos and fucking all sorts of crazy shit, like no, like do something in your local community, man. Like step up. You're a capable American, right? Anyways.
Amen, brother.
The other thing I wanted to mention was the state. So we saw Wyoming. Was it Wyoming or was it Wisconsin? Wisconsin with the Bitcoin. Here, let me pull that up real quick. Did you see that?
Bitcoin. I'm trying to recollect what you might be going.
Yeah, here towards. It goes. Pension plan likely to invest much more in Bitcoin ETF. So David Krause, professor of finance at Marquette, said the initial investment by the state of Wisconsin investment board is just a toe in the water to test the public's reaction, because the investment by the state of Wisconsin investment board into the spot Bitcoin ETFs earlier this year is just a trial phase. But did you see that? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, so I'm not surprised, right? I mean, we've seen some state and local governments already kind of dip their toes into Bitcoin. I don't know if you remember this, like a couple of years ago, I think it was like the city of Dallas or maybe like maybe Fort Worth or something was gonna mine Bitcoin in their like public office or something like that. So I think a lot of local governments are going to start to do that. Last bull market we saw the mayor of Tampa, the mayor of New York City, the mayor of Miami accept part of their paycheck in Bitcoin. So I think that's just going to continue to happen. But I think, what the ETFs do is it gives validity behind Bitcoin for anybody that wants to hold it that, maybe is not going to, do the whole self-custody route. And who's not going to do the self-custody route? So likely publicly traded businesses, governments, that kind of thing. So I think, more and more governments are going to get into it. More and more pension funds are going to get into Bitcoin. And I think, it's, unfortunate that they're going to go through that route. But, I guess at the end of the day, if they need some sort of like insurance backing it, right, where they could point the finger at BlackRock, where it's like, hey, if BlackRock screws it up, you guys owe them money or Bitcoin or whatever. It's not going to be, hey, Sally, who, was screwing around, lost the keys, one of the multi-sig or whatever it is, right? They're not going to put that responsibility on the employees or the local governments. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the DMV anytime recently. I'm sure you know that the governments can't figure out how to run anything efficiently. So I wouldn't trust them to do. I wouldn't trust them to hold their own keys either. So I could see why that.
Maybe they'll spin up maybe they'll spin up another ABC agency and around that. I could see that happening, like like a Bitcoin task force or something, and they build a whole agency around it and they take care of all that stuff. I could see that happening.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Or maybe it's a task force within like the NSA or the CIA. It's like one of those kind of things. Yeah, you never know.
That would happen. I think we're still probably like 5 to 10 years away from something like that happening. It's like they're already going to be like.
I'm sure somebody's concocting that somewhere inside the deep state. I'm sure somebody is inside the DOD. What I was going to bring up was I think it's interesting how like these state treasuries are diversifying, right? I think that's the most fascinating thing about it. Yeah, the BlackRock stuff and all that, but. When I was on retreat, I had there was an accountant that was a part of our group, and he was asking me questions around like what I did, and then we got into the whole Bitcoin topic, and he didn't even know about the BlackRock ETF. But as soon as I told him about it, he's like, oh, then at that case, yeah, we'll be looking into that. Like it wasn't even like, it was like, I didn't even need to explain anything else about Bitcoin at that point. Like it was just already a given. When that was really interesting to hear, just like from like a local level, how that name carries that much weight.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's just from like, all right, if you're a money manager, right? And you know of Bitcoin, right? Like you're somebody, you're managing somebody's money, whether it's a family office or even somebody bigger, right? I mean, like, all these big investment banks now, like JP Morgan and, Fidelity, they all offer Bitcoin to their clients. But the little guys, they might not have done that before because they're like, hey, you're trusting me to manage your money. They're like, don't take too many risks, whatever. I know Sally Joe personally, she doesn't want me in anything but the S&P. Well, now you can convince them like, hey, BlackRock's in it. Why don't we just put 1% of our portfolio into this BlackRock ETF and see what happens? And then, that 1% is going to start to turn into 10 to 20 and it's just going to be a snowball effect. So, although I think BlackRock and a lot of these, the traditional finance tools to get into Bitcoin are not the best path forward, I do think that, it's one step forward for Bitcoin. And I think it's positive because what we've seen, it happened with the gold ETFs. A bunch of people flocked to the gold ETFs and dumped a ton of money into it, but not quite as much as Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin reached billions of dollars into dumping into it in like 3 days in the same amount of time that gold took like 3 months. But what's been happening over the past 3 or 4 years is that we've seen a net outflow of the gold ETFs, and gold prices has been rising like crazy. And the reason being is because central banks are buying up gold, and I think people are looking to get to the physical asset. So I think that's going to be the evolution of Bitcoin, where a lot of people get in, via the ETF. They start to read about it more and more and more. And we're going to see a lot of net inflows into the ETFs for, maybe 5-10 years or so. But, 5-10 years down the road, people will start to wake up about, maybe one of these, money managers falls or does something or some event happens. And it's going to spark like a bunch of people being like, okay, well, I actually want to withdraw my Bitcoin and hold it myself and find out new ways of how to do that. And I think, we'll see net outflows in the ETF in the future, but Bitcoin price, the exchange rate, dollars to Bitcoin, increase. And I think that's just kind of the gold ETF is kind of foreshadowing what's ahead for Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's some good alpha there. The other thing I want to bring up was you had mentioned, or I don't know if you did mention this, but I do think there's some tokenization aspects to this that people aren't, because I kind of personally as a Bitcoiner, not just car, like blah, blah, car. It's like car, personally, Bitcoiner car. Like I feel like this and this when it comes to the Bitcoin ETF, or part of me feels like it's the end to the ETF, and then the other part of me is like, well, no, maybe it's a new beginning. And so I battle with this, right? Like, but I definitely feel like the game has changed post Bitcoin ETF. Like that, I know for certain. I just know. Like you can look at it. Post Bitcoin ETF, everything's going to be different. But I will say though, like you bring up a good point. Maybe there is room for tokenization when it comes to some of these assets that haven't been digitized yet. Maybe the gold ETF is there. Maybe the Bitcoin ETF is there, and maybe some of these other securities are also in that kind of framework as well too. I do think maybe that's where this probably, now that we're having this conversation, I'm glad that we have these conversations, because maybe now I'm thinking like, well, maybe this is all leading to that anyway. Maybe we are moving towards this tokenization world, and maybe these things are going to get traded pretty fast. And you can imagine like some sort of like hyper ledger of a sort, and no pun intended, but it could get really interesting in that kind of world where it's like digital first. The only thing that sucks with that is like what we were talking about earlier is all the KYC and AML stuff, but you could see a world where there could be tremendous prosperity from that. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
Yeah. And I think like we're kind of already seeing some signs of it, right? We're seeing a lot of companies like distribute tokens, which they're kind of like marketing almost as like shares of their company and like paying out dividends and something. I interviewed somebody, that podcast hasn't dropped yet, but it's like a green mining DAO. So they basically, unless you're an institutional investor in the US, you can't invest in them, but they basically take like a minimum of like 5,000 or something like that. And then you buy like a token or a share of the company, and then they pay you out like quarterly based on, and that token or share is like, basically helping fund Bitcoin mining operation, like getting it up from the ground up. And then you get, dividends paid out in Bitcoin. So that's kind of their way around of like not being a publicly traded company, but allowing you to then trade liquid 24/7, 365. We're already having Robinhood kind of open up the pre-market even earlier, right? So instead of people are having that demand of not wanting to trade just stocks and equities or whatever from like 9:30 Eastern time to 4, they want it 24/7, 365. The futures markets already have it, but they want that. So I think that's going to be more of a conversation going forward. I don't know if it's going to be necessarily good. I think that's more of like the gambling aspect of it, and that's where you kind of see the start of a degraded society, is when you start to see like people really getting into gambling. And that's, a whole nother conversation. We can get down that if you want. But we also saw, I don't know if you saw this today, but BlackRock and one other, either Vanguard, I think it was Vanguard, maybe I'm misquoting it, but I know for sure it was BlackRock, is looking into starting another stock exchange out of Texas because of the recent Roaring Kitty news. I don't know if you've been keeping up with that, but basically the same kind of thing happened again as it happened in like late 2020, where Roaring Kitty tweeted out, about GME. He went up like 40% in one day and made like $86 million. And then they halted trading. And in that same day, we saw Berkshire Hathaway go down 99%. We saw gold, that ticker GOLD, go down 99%, and like CMO go down 99%. So we saw a lot of like gaming going on, and they halted trading of GME and one other stock. And then now they're talking about E-Trade, who Roaring Kitty has his like trading account. They're talking about shutting him down and like not even allowing him to trade stocks. So I think, people are seeing that it's not a free and open market in the stock market, but they don't really know what another option is. In the end, right, it's bullish for Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the only true and free open market that you can, if you wanted to trade or purchase or sell or whatever, that you can do liquid 24/7, 365. So, I think more people are opening their eyes to that. But I think like the gamification and the tokenization of everything is coming. And I think like this is just kind of, a sign of what's ahead. It's like, we're going to create another stock market. We're going to find another way to, sell shares, quote unquote, of our company without, going publicly traded. And, that's kind of some scary times ahead for the investor, because the SEC is supposed to be there to protect the investor. We know that they don't really necessarily do that. But, having that free and open thing, that's where we run into a lot of these scams. And, that's kind of why we saw, shitcoin mania during the last bull run.
Yeah. And also just personally, I think just super bullish for Texas. And a lot of the innovation is coming from Texas these days. I mean, outside of AI in San Francisco, I mean, it's a lot of the innovations coming from Texas. And we both know New York, specifically New York City, is highly regulated. So it's incredibly bullish for Texas, though.
Yeah, and I think more people are flocking. We saw it during COVID, people flocking to Texas, Tennessee, Florida, like those kind of states that stayed more open. I think that's just going to continue, because these states are more open, less regulations, more businesses are going to come down there. A lot of businesses, I'm sure you know this, right? They file as like a Delaware C Corp opposed to like filing in like New York City, because, but they conduct business in, New York City, because that's where everybody was. Now in the growing like remote work capability, where a lot of these companies, you don't necessarily have to be physically together. I think, that's going to spread out and diversify. And I think more businesses, you've seen a lot of businesses flock to Austin area or Texas in general. That's that's going to continue. I mean, people go where their incentives lie, right? So
100%.
as long as these states keep it up, I think the whole United States will be as a whole will be fine. But hopefully, knock on wood, that these states don't take a turn for the worse and kind of try to follow the California or the New York path where
right.
they make not very advantageous to have a business there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're even seeing it inside this building, dude. Like when we got here, Blab got here, there's no one in here. Literally no one. It was vacant. And now we have a company next door. There's a new company like over here now looking at the space today. Like, why do they want to be next to the Bitcoiners? But it just kind of, not because of us, but I'm saying like there just shows you like, there's a lot of innovation happening in Austin, and a lot of them are grouped together in this kind of financial district right now, which is like less than a mile block kind of radius. It's literally a lot of Bitcoin companies, a lot of just tech companies here in this 1 mile block. And it's super bullish.
Yeah, people want to be around builders, right? People want to be around, things that are being successful. And like the more that you guys keep building it up down there in Austin, the more people are going to want to be around that.
Totally. That's what we want. We want it's bounty for everybody. I was going to say the other thing too, it's interesting though, that most people that come to Texas, though, they do become more Texan. So you're even seeing it with like Joe Rogan, right? Like he's become a Christian now. It's like you're seeing like that's what happens. Like you move to Texas and your values change for the better, I believe. So maybe we'll see some of this here in some of these other big companies. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't doubt it, right? I mean, and Rogan and a lot of these other people moved to Austin for a reason, right? I mean, they see the writing on the wall wherever they were before, and they see Austin as like a beacon of light. So, I mean, as somebody that grew up there,
I know, dude, you grew up here.
Yeah, I can't say anything bad about it. I can't say anything bad about it.
That's awesome, dude. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and just rapping with me about all this stuff. I don't have anybody else to talk to about this stuff, man. Really, I appreciate you. Appreciate you coming on and spelling it out for the plebs. What was I going to say? Let's talk about a little about what you got going on at Green Candle. Tell me about all the updates that you're doing and where you're going to be speaking at. And dude, you're blowing up, man. What's going on? Like, let's talk about you for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be a huge shill, but I started. So I'm up in the content basically. So. Yeah. I've gotten, 3 great sponsors. So shout out to them. Shout out to Stamp Seed Foundation and Bitcoin Trading Cards for helping bring me along. But, I'm going to start doing some more 2 podcasts a week. I'm going to start doing some live streams, two a week as well during my lunch breaks while I still fiat mine on Tuesdays and Fridays.
Nice.
And then I'm going to get up my macro channels all kind of up as well. And as far as like traveling goes, I'll be the next conference is in Nashville. I kind of want to get there like a week before. So if anybody's going to be there before, be sure to hit me up. I actually turned 30 right before there. So
dude, you're so young, bro. Gosh.
Yeah, my back's starting to hurt a little bit, Carl. I got to stretch out a little bit.
You should sleep on the floor. Sleeping on the floor helps that.
Yeah. But if anybody wants to grab a beer or something like that while we're in Nashville, I'll be there. And then learning Bitcoin too. This hasn't been officially set in stone, but my buddy Tristan from Me Premier Bitcoin, he's putting together something in Victoria, Canada, which is like right above Seattle, I want to say, like in the Vancouver area. It's more for like newer Bitcoiners. And I think maybe if I say it here and he doesn't do it, then everybody can yell at him, but I'm going to be the MC of that day. I think it's Saturday, the 28th. So I'll be speaking in Nashville. I don't know the full extent of that yet. And then there, and that's kind of all I have planned out so far. I think I'm going to go to Unconfiscatable as well.
Nice.
If it's still doing that in Vegas. And I want to keep it going, but the goal is to get Green Candle to the point where I can do it full time by the end of the year. And
it's going to happen.
I'm on a good path. So
it's going to happen.
It's a lot of turn because of your support, Carl.
No, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. We're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen together.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. A lot of positive momentum.
Also too, we definitely need you to, we're going to be doing another startup day in September. So would love for you to come down there and, cause you're an amazing, I'm just going to say something about Brandon for people that are listening who are thinking about getting some moderators for different conferences. I would say Brandon comes prepared. He's a breath of fresh air in the morning. So like he's ready to go. The third thing is he's always so positive. Fourth thing is he asks really great questions, and people that he or the panel people tend to like you and give you really good alpha. So I think that's a very rare bird, man. You're a rare bird. It's hard to find those things. So I would say if anybody's listening who wants him to moderate a panel, like there's no one better than Brandon Keys.
Thank you.
That's Carr right there.
There we go. That means the world coming from you, Carr. So I really appreciate it. Yeah, you guys have always given me opportunity, so I'm really blessed to have that, and always come down for startup days. I'm always there. Whenever you need me, Carr, I'll be there.
Well, this will be out of country, so we're still trying to get everything locked in, but yeah, well, I'll let you know more as we get more details. But
yeah, we'll figure it out.